My name is Rick Petty, and I'm the President General Manager here at Logan County Electric Cooperative. Logan County Electric Cooperative was incorporated on December 16th, 1935. We were the 18th cooperative in the entire United States that received money from the federal government when the REA program, the Rural Electric Administration program, was put into effect by President Roosevelt back then. Basically, of the original 6 incorporators, one was my uncle, Melvin Seitzinger. And so basically what happened there is that he helped go out to the entire community, and the federal government, in the maps there of Logan County, when they were going for the, to say, well, could we give a grant for this, the loans for this, they said that our county map looked like it had measles. It was totally pinpricked with people who wanted electric power. My uncle, one of the 6, never was able to get power. 3,000 farms in 1935 that were in Logan County, only 286 had central station power at the time. So that's why the co-op was formed. The cooperatives are a self-help organization. That's at the very core. And so the farmers, as we had tremendous desire among the farmers for the service, they wanted to help themselves and to be able to bring the power to the community. And that's why we had all those massive pinpricks all over the map. It almost looked like measles because so many wanted power they could not get any other way. And so they worked together to make that happen. When the electric cooperatives formed here in Ohio, they were local, small, across wide areas that were not served by the investor-owned utilities. Investor-owned utilities like Dayton Power and Light, now as AEP or Ohio Power, there's different investor-owns. So what happened in the process, though, is that in the rural areas, the co-ops began to merge. And so you would go from 40 or so into where we're now down to about 24 here in Ohio. In regards to the infrastructure that takes place not only here in Ohio but in the United States, electric cooperatives cover 75% of the land mass of the United States. So they provide the electricity to 75% of the land mass of the United States. That's only a small percentage of the actual people in the United States, but we cover because back to the investor-owned utilities, they said they could not make enough profit in order to serve that. And so for our case with the infrastructure, when we buy a transformer to put on the power pole, it costs us right around $800, $900 a transformer. When Dayton Power and Light puts a transformer on the power pole, it's about $800 or $900 for them too. When we put a pole in the ground, it's probably $400 or $500. When they put it in the ground, it's about $400 or $500. Our costs are almost identical the same. However, we only have 5 to 7 members per mile to cover those costs. They will have between 50 and 70 people per mile because of their density. And so what happens then is that it's remarkable, co-ops were never formed to provide power at a lower cost. They were to provide power at cost, realizing it would cost more because we have fewer people to cover the fixed expenses over. So it's really fascinating that even with the fact that we have, like say 5 to 7 members per mile to cover the costs of all that infrastructure, an investor-owned has between 50 and 70 per mile to cover their cost, we still do it usually less than what they do it for, which means that difference between 5 to 7 and 50 to 70 is all profit to that corporate investor-owned. And that's where the electric cooperative model helps people help themselves to what they want to have in the most effective, cost-efficient manner. President Roosevelt actually began what we now know as, or became as the REA, okay, the Rural Electrification Administration. What happened was the original intent was basically to create jobs for people back then. We're coming through the Depression times, the New Deal effect, and so he actually offered all the federal money to the investor-owns, to the investors to be able to go provide power in the rural areas. The investor-owns would not even accept money from the federal government. They said, we still can't make a profit, even if you give us this money to build it. Right. And so the farmers actually came forward and said, give it to us. We'll make it happen. And due to a small co-op down in Louisiana, It's called, or Maine, Mississippi, Corinth, Mississippi. Because that small co-op had already done that, and they used it as a test case, they opened it up to say, okay, farmers could form cooperatives, and we'll see how it goes, and then the rest is history. A primary need within the rural areas was for electric power so that their quality of life could be improved, to be similar to what was in the case of the cities. And that's actually one of the things, the reason the co-ops were formed, wasn't to just be an electric company, but to help improve the quality of life for people in the rural community through providing electricity. But now we're in the 2000s. And one of the things that's happening right now among rural cooperatives across the country, and here in Ohio especially, is the bringing of broadband services to the rural community, to every home. For example, here in Ohio, up in Delaware, Ohio, and up in Mount Gilead, Ohio, there's a cooperative called Consolidated Electric Cooperative. And they right now are bringing and installing broadband through fiber to every home of every member of their cooperative. And that is an initiative that is taking place across our country right now, because just as we helped to bring electricity back in the days when they needed that to have parity of quality of life, broadband is now becoming that electricity of the present. That is the mechanism we need to have now, and co-ops are at the very forefront of that.